Hi everyone, welcome to my Acrylic Tuesday pouring video. This time this video will be a bit different than the videos I had before, because this one is a really large project. And by large I mean something like 120 by 90 centimeters, which is, to be honest, not one of the regular pouring canvas sizes. So most of the time I'm going something about 20 by 20, 30 by 30, up to 50 by 50, or sometimes even 30 by 60 centimeters. So this canvas in this pour is going to be really large. So this one is a commission for Christmas from one of my close friends, and she basically just gave me some rough ideas how she wanted it to look. So she gave me some color information, so which color she wanted to have applied to it, which was some red and violet color palette along with a bluish water-like color palette. So these colors had to be combined on the canvas, and she wanted to have some structure onto it. So not just like a regular dirty pour flip cup, so that you cannot really predict how the colors go and intermix. She wanted to have some, more or less structure with the reds, for example, and the blues attached like water or something like this. And this was the challenge I was facing, besides the size of the canvas. And what you cannot really see here in this video is how I mix the colors, but there's nothing really special or secret about. I just used my regular acrylic paints that I normally use, which is from Artina, so nothing really fancy special from the acrylic side. I also used a neon pink because I wanted some color to pop, but this, to be honest, was the only special color that I used for here. I used some purple, some magenta, some deep red, some yellow, and for the blue color palette I used my phthalo-cyanine blue, which is a really dark and heavy blue, a metallic turquoise color, and a white. All these colors were mixed with a bit of Floetrol. Some of these colors were just mixed with water, and each color finally received some drops of silicone, which is the dimethicone as I usually use, to make a cell creation. So if you do not want to use silicone and have the Floetrol, you can use just this, as the Floetrol enable the cell creation in these areas from its own. But if you have silicone attached, you are pretty sure you will receive the cells. And I was not really sure how the paint actually is going to behave on this kind of a canvas, because I can't just do a bucket of 2 liters of paint and just throw it on there. So I decided to make several cups, but larger cups this time. And each of these cups is about 400 milliliters of paint. And I think I used about 4 or 5 of them, so it was roughly about 2 liters of paint, which is applied to the canvas in the very end. And for the beginning I mixed my reddish colors. And as a small side note, I used an artist grade canvas for this project, which had about 450 GSM canvas, just because I wanted to be a bit stiffer than the regular canvases that I use. Normally I use something about 280 GSM or 350 GSM, something like this, but I wanted to go as heavy as I can for this project, as it will need to hold a very large amount of paint. And I used an artist grade one to have it stiff from the very beginning. So I applied these wooden tiny thingies, so I put it into the canvas frame and I hammered them in to make it even more stiff, so that the color itself will not sink in the middle and create awkward shapes. And when I was done, I really had a really stiff canvas, which was something I wanted to have just to be on the safe side. If my canvas was too wobbly and not hard enough from the surface, the end result was even more unpredictable than it was in general. So I wanted to cross this variable out in the very beginning, which in the end was a really good idea to do. So once I had my colors mixed, I just put them into the cup, as I think it might look cool. At some point I made some separation barriers with a white or a yellow color in between of the reds, so that I have some kind of separation between these layers and that the colors a bit intermix. So I didn't want to have the magenta and the dark red in 2 layers above each other, because they would probably not pop that much. So I made a separation layer between each of these colors to make somewhat color shift possible in the very end, which in a way worked. So I expected it to be less visible in the end, so it worked cool. And for some contrast I also added some of the violet, because this is the darkest reddish bluish color that I had in this pour, at least at the beginning. And once I had my colors mixed, I more or less just put it onto the canvas, and I wanted it to look a bit more or less dynamic. So I used one more or less swirly motion to bring the color onto the canvas, and I spreaded it around a bit. I did not want to tilt the canvas too much to not get any awkward shapes or create mega pixels, because this is something I did not really want to have on this canvas. I wanted it to look in a way genuine in the end, so that each part of the canvas has about the same size of cells and in a way the same look to it, although the colors of course differ. So I didn't want to have areas with very tiny cells and some areas with large cells or even no cells. Yeah, this was actually my goal, and as far as I could influence this to be the end result, I wanted to try what I can. So I of course tilted the canvas a bit to spread the color around, to not have super heavy loads of paint on the canvas. And once I felt this is as much as I can tilt or should tilt to not destroy something, I added some more colors. And along the way I felt that I need some more contrast in some areas. So I also added some black to my red color palette, as this was supposed to be the most dark color that I can mix, of course, and to make some areas pop a bit more. So to lead your eye actually around the canvas, not just make it stick to one point of the canvas. Once all the color was applied and also added the blue, I used my small torch to bring some cells up in areas that I thought they need some more cells. And as of the size, when everything was down and torched and ready more or less, I had to step back a bit. Because, wow, this is colorful. A really popping pour, I'd say. So really many colors, very vibrant. Wow. But this wow feeling, she really told me before that she wanted to have this. And I really thought this is wow enough. Of course, I knew that the colors are still brighter and lighter when they are red, so I expected it to dry darker than it is the result that I'm currently seeing here, or that you're currently seeing here. And it did actually, so I'm quite happy that it dried a bit darker than it is here in this moment of the pour, when it's still everything red. And you will see the end result in the very end, of course. So when the paint was applied, of course, this had to dry a bit. And to have this project done, I actually just used our living room table, which I was allowed to use for a couple of days. So thank you, babe. And I just put some clear film underneath. So when I received the canvas, I just kept the clear film that it was wrapped in and put it underneath the table to protect our floor. And lucky me, the table was a bit smaller than the canvas is, so I could have just put the canvas onto the table and everything that went over the edges of the canvas just dripped onto the clear film. And I was impressed that not so much paint really dripped off. So the paint that dripped off I just used for the edges, so that everything looks as one piece in the end. But it really did not drip off that much, which I really did not expect. So, and then the drying time actually began. It was a bit smell intense, I'd say. So 2 liters of acrylic paints drying slowly is something you would want to have a ventilation going. So we opened the door as often as we could. But after a day or so, everything was okay and the major smell was off. And yeah, it began drying. So the first day, I think it was about 1 centimeter around the edges. And then every day I could see more of the dried project. And overall it took about 3 or 4 days until everything was really dried. After the 3rd day I put a ventilator underneath the canvas. So I just moved it a bit from the table, have it still elevated and level, and put the ventilator onto it to make it blow from underneath. I could have used it to blow from up above, but I really did not want to have the color on top of the pour dried before the color underneath, because this would have created cracking. And as this is just a cotton canvas, the water actually soaks through the fabric anyways. So I thought, okay, I can just blow the air from underneath and make it dry faster there, so that more water can actually soak into the fabric and yeah, dry it this way. And this really changed a lot. So having the ventilator about 5 hours this day really sped up the whole drying process a lot. This is something for larger projects that I'll continue doing to speed up the process, because it takes a long time and of course in this size quite some space as well. So I have a couple of more ideas which I want to try in this kind of a size canvas. I'm not sure how soon I will be allowed to use the table again. You will see. I will see. And yeah, when this one was dried, I had to remove the silicone, which was another challenge in this size again. And as I normally do removing my silicone, I just put it into a bathroom. I used some baby powder and applied it to the entire canvas. If you have no baby powder available, you can just use your kitchen flour. This in a way has the very same effect as the baby powder. So I applied it onto the canvas, covered everything and let it sit for about 15-20 minutes. And what it does, the silicone which is sitting on top of the acrylic paint will soak into the baby powder or the flour and more or less bind to it. And once this is done and you brush off the powder, you will see areas on the canvas where we have some remaining white dots of the powder or the flour that are bound to the silicone. And this is actually what you want to achieve, because now the silicone is more or less soaked into the powder and you can brush it off with a brush. Use a soft brush to not destroy the surface. And I normally just use my hands to wipe it off as good as I can, and then I use a soft towel and some soap and go over it a couple of times. And don't be alarmed, you will have some color onto your towel. This is not because some areas were not dry. I hope at least that you waited until everything was completely dried. This is because of the silicone. The silicone also binds some of the color pigment to it. So when you go over with the towel, you will have at least a bit of pigment stick to your towel. This is not an issue. Just go over the entire piece a couple of times and you will be good. And having this done, you will more or less have completely moved the silicone and you can go over varnishing it. And this may take a couple layers, 1, 2, 3. This really depends on the varnish that you have and how good you remove the silicone. If you have some silicone left on your artwork, you will have the varnish create some small tiny holes. What I usually do when I have this happen, and I had this happen here, I apply the varnish and waited if some gaps come up. And if they do, I just brush over it and over again. And I used my hairdryer to make the varnish coat dry quicker. And so I was able to remove all these little gaps, which are caused by mini rest amounts of silicone that are still on there. And once this first layer was dried almost completely even, I used another coat. And everything was perfectly fine and shiny, and here you can see the end result. So this was something different. I hope you like it. I hope you did not find it too disturbing from the shapes and the colors. Let me know what you think, and let me know if you've tried something similar that large as well. Again, I have a couple more ideas that I want to test out, and I will of course show you. I've decided to make Tuesday my Pouring Tuesday, so each week one of these new idea videos or something that I did. If you're new to my channel, please make sure to subscribe, and if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Besides the acrylic pouring, I also do some realism works, which you can find here in tutorials. And for those, I have designated that Friday or Sunday might be my go-to day to show these videos. If you have a preference, let me know in the comments. If you want to have it on Friday or Sunday, I'm not really sure myself yet. So feel free to have a look at my other videos, and I would of course be happy to see you in my next videos. Have a great day. Bye bye.